The grand chamber stretched wider than any building on Earth. 12 massive seats formed a semicircle, each one holding a representative from the ancient civilizations that ruled the galaxy. Above them, holographic displays showed star maps covering thousands of light years. In the center of it all stood Director Sarah Chen, representing humanity. She had been standing there for 3 hours. "Your petition is denied," said the Jakrel Imperium representative. His name was Admiral Zestak, and he looked like a massive reptile crossed with a nightmare. His scales were deep purple and his eyes were cold yellow slits. "The Outer Rim mining operations belong to the Council. Your colonies must withdraw immediately." Sarah kept her voice calm. "Those asteroids were unclaimed. We followed every protocol. We registered our claims through proper channels. We have been mining there for 5 years without issue." "Without permission," corrected the luminary delegate. She was a being made of living crystal, her body refracting light into rainbow patterns. Her voice sounded like wind chimes. "You humans are new here. You do not understand how things work. The Outer Rim has always been Council territory. Then why isn't it marked on any territorial maps?" Sarah asked, the chamber filled with sounds that might have been laughter. The Garan representative, a floating jellyfish-like creature, spoke through a translator device. "Because it has always been understood. Only humans would need such things written down." Sarah had dealt with this for 3 years now. 3 years of meetings, petitions, and diplomatic talks. 3 years of condescending tones and dismissive gestures. Earth had tried everything the peaceful way. They had filed proper documents. They had offered trade agreements. They had even offered to share the mining profits. Nothing had worked. "We are willing to negotiate a fair agreement," Sarah said. She was tired, but she couldn't show it. "Humanity wants peace. We want to be good neighbors in this galaxy." Admiral Zestak rose from his seat. He was massive, nearly 3 meters tall. "You speak of what you want. The Council speaks of what will be. You have 30 planetary rotations to remove your colonies from the Outer Rim. All mining equipment will be surrendered to Council forces. Any ships remaining after that time will be destroyed." Sarah felt her jaw tighten. "That's not negotiation. That's theft. Call it what you wish," the Admiral said. His lipless mouth curved into something resembling a smile. "Your species has been at peace for 200 of your years, correct? You have grown soft. You build civilian ships and research stations. You talk about art and philosophy. This is good. This is civilized. But you must understand your place." "Our place?" Sarah asked quietly. "You are children in a galaxy of ancients," the luminary said. Her tone was almost gentle, like someone explaining obvious facts to a slow student. "The Jakrel Imperium has existed for 40,000 years. My people have watched stars be born and die. The youngest race in this council has been traveling between worlds for 12,000 years. Humans have been in space for less than 1,000 years. You are infants." Sarah looked at each of the 12 representatives. Not one of them met her eyes with anything resembling respect. She saw pity in some faces, amusement in others, but mostly she saw contempt. "So this is your final decision?" she asked. "It is not a decision," Admiral Zestak said. "It is reality. Accept it peacefully or we will help you accept it. The choice is yours." Sarah pulled a small datapad from her jacket. She tapped it several times, then held it up. "This is a compiled history of humanity. I'm transmitting it to all of your systems right now. I suggest you read it before you make your final choice." "We know your history," the Guran representative bubbled through its translator. "You are a young species that finally learned to stop killing each other. You should be proud of this. It shows growth. We didn't stop," Sarah said quietly. "We chose to stop. There's a difference. Semantics." The Admiral waved a clawed hand dismissively. "You have 30 rotations. That is generous. Some on this council wanted to simply take what we need without warning. I convinced them to give you time to leave peacefully. You should thank me." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. She thought about her grandfather, who had fought in the last war on Earth. The Century of Fire, they called it. 50 years of brutal conflict that nearly destroyed the planet. He had told her stories when she was young. Stories about what humans could do when they stopped holding back. Stories that gave her nightmares. "I have one final warning for this council," Sarah said. Her voice was steady, but something in her tone made several representatives shift in their seats. "You are making a mistake. Humanity has chosen peace. We have chosen to be better than we were. But if you take this action, if you attack our people, you will learn something about us, and what is that?" the Admiral asked. He was still smiling. You will learn why we had to choose peace in the first place. You will learn what we are capable of when that choice is taken away from us. The chamber erupted in more sounds of alien laughter. The Admiral's smile widened. Is that a threat? From a species of soft things who have known nothing but peace for 2 centuries? Your colonies are defended by mining crews and civilian security forces. My fleet could destroy them in hours. Yes, Sarah said. You probably could. And then you would have to deal with what comes after. Nothing will come after, the Admiral said. This council has spoken. You have 30 rotations. Use them wisely. Sarah turned to leave. As she reached the massive doors of the chamber, she stopped and looked back. My grandfather told me something once. He said the most dangerous thing in the universe is a peaceful person who has been forced to fight. Because they know exactly what they're trying to prevent, and they know exactly how to do it. Primitive wisdom from a primitive species, the luminary said. Sarah nodded slowly. Maybe, but I tried. Remember that. I stood here and I warned you. Keep pushing, and you'll find out why we stopped fighting each other. You wanted to see what we're capable of. You're going to regret that. The doors closed behind her with a sound like thunder. In the chamber, Admiral Zesthak addressed the council. Dispatch the Third Fleet to the Outer Rim. The humans will learn their place or they will learn to die quietly. Either result is acceptable. The vote was unanimous. The war had begun and only one side knew it yet. The mining colony on asteroid base Gamma 7 had 342 people. Most were engineers and mining specialists. 20 were security personnel trained to deal with equipment accidents and the occasional dispute between workers. None of them were soldiers. When the Jakrell warships appeared on their scanners, Chief Security Officer Marcus Webb knew they had maybe 10 minutes before the end. All personnel to emergency shelters, he broadcast over the station-wide system. His voice was calm. This is not a drill. Hostile vessels approaching. I repeat, this is not a drill. The Jakrell didn't bother with warnings. 3 massive warships, each one the size of a city block, opened fire on the mining platforms. Explosions tore through metal and rock. The vacuum of space swallowed the screams, but the colony didn't surrender. Marcus and his security team grabbed whatever they could use as weapons. Mining lasers, explosive charges meant for breaking asteroids, industrial equipment that could be turned into improvised bombs. The miners joined them. These weren't soldiers, but they were people defending their homes. When the first Jakrell boarding party breached the main habitat module, they expected fear. They expected surrender. Instead, they walked into an ambush. Mining charges detonated in the corridor, sending shrapnel through their armor. The survivors were met with focused laser fire from positions the Jakrell scanners hadn't detected. It took the Jakrell 2 hours to take the colony. They lost 47 soldiers doing it. Admiral Zesthak reviewed the reports from his flagship. 2 more colonies had been attacked. Similar results. The humans fought viciously using tactics the Admiral had never seen. They turned their own facilities into traps. They refused to surrender even when defeat was certain. At the second colony, the humans had deliberately breached their own reactor core when defeat was inevitable, killing themselves and 23 Jakrell soldiers. These humans are insane, his tactical officer reported. They do not fight to win. They fight to cause us maximum casualties, even if it means their own deaths. The Admiral stared at the casualty numbers. 3 colonies taken, over 200 Jakrell dead or wounded. The humans had no military ships, no soldiers, just civilians with mining equipment, and they had made his fleet bleed. Back on Earth, Sarah Chen stood in the emergency command center beneath Geneva. Screens around her showed news feeds from across human space. The 3 colonies had gone dark. Everyone knew what that meant. The Secretary General of the United Nations addressed the gathered military commanders. The Galactic Council has fired the first shots. Our people are dead. Now we must decide how we respond. General James Morrison, the highest-ranking military officer on Earth, stood up. He was an old man, nearly 80 years old. He had studied military history his entire life. With respect, sir, we don't need to decide how to respond. Humanity already knows how to respond. The question is how far we're willing to go. Explain, the Secretary General said. Morrison activated a holographic display. Images filled the air above the conference table. Ancient images. Trenches filled with mud and bodies. Cities reduced to rubble. Mushroom clouds rising over devastated landscapes. This is what we are. This is what we were. For 10,000 years, humanity perfected one skill above all others. War. Total war. War that doesn't stop until one side cannot continue. That was the past, someone objected. We're better now, are we? Morrison asked. Or did we just choose to stop? After the century of fire, after we nearly destroyed ourselves, we made a choice. We decided to be peaceful. We built a civilization based on cooperation and progress. We've had 200 years of peace. It's been wonderful. But the choice to be peaceful is not the same as being incapable of war. Sarah spoke up. I warned them. I told the council they were making a mistake. They laughed at me. They don't understand, Morrison said. Their species evolved past war naturally, over thousands of years. It's not in their recent memory, but we remember. Some of us still have grandparents who fought in the last war. The knowledge is still there. The instincts are still there. We just buried them. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what was being discussed. The Secretary General looked around the table. If we do this, there's no going back. The galaxy will see what we're capable of. They'll fear us. They'll also never attack us again, Sarah said quietly. Right now they think we're weak. They think 200 years of peace made us soft. They need to learn the truth, which is, the Secretary General asked, that we didn't forget how to fight. We just got really, really good at pretending we did. The vote took less than 5 minutes. It was unanimous. General Morrison opened a secure database that hadn't been accessed in 2 centuries. Files labeled with names from humanity's dark past, blitzkrieg, total war, mutually assured destruction, scorched earth, every terrible strategy humanity had ever devised, all carefully preserved. We'll need to mobilize everything, Morrison said. Every shipyard, every factory. We'll convert civilian vessels to military use. We'll activate the emergency draft protocols, and we'll dust off every piece of military technology we've kept in storage. How long until we can launch a counteroffensive? The Secretary General asked. The fleet can be ready in 3 weeks, but we can start the psychological campaign immediately. Psychological campaign? Morrison smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. We're going to remind the galaxy of something they've forgotten. War isn't just about ships and weapons. It's about will. It's about making your enemy afraid. And humanity wrote the book on fear. In the Outer Rim, the Jekrel Third Fleet was securing its conquered territories when the first human broadcast reached them. It wasn't a message demanding the return of the colonies. It wasn't a threat of military action. It was something much worse. Every Jekrel communication device simultaneously received the same transmission. No words, just audio. The sounds of Jekrel soldiers dying. Their screams. Their final words. All recorded from the colony attacks. 3 hours of continuous death sounds from their own people. And at the end, a single line of text in perfect Jekrel language. You wanted war. This is war. Admiral Zestak ordered the transmission traced. It came from everywhere and nowhere. Somehow the humans had infiltrated their entire communication network. That night, alone in his quarters, the Admiral accessed the files Sarah Chen had transmitted to the Council. The complete history of humanity. He started reading about something called World War II, then World War I, then the Century of Fire. By dawn, he had sent an urgent message to the Galactic Council. Request immediate reinforcements. The humans are not what we thought. I repeat, they are not what we thought. But it was too late. The sleeping giant had opened its eyes, and it remembered exactly how to be a nightmare. The Jekrel supply convoy never saw them coming. One moment, 17 transport ships were moving through deep space toward the occupied colonies. The next moment, 3 of them exploded. Then 5 more. The remaining ships tried to scatter, but invisible attackers picked them off one by one. In 8 minutes, the entire convoy was destroyed. No debris from the attackers was found. No wreckage, nothing. Admiral Zestak studied the sensor logs with growing unease. The human ships appeared from nowhere, fired and vanished before his forces could respond. They were using some kind of stealth technology the Jekrel had never encountered, but that wasn't what bothered him most. What bothered him was the pattern. The humans weren't trying to reclaim their colonies. They weren't attacking military targets to win territory. They were attacking everything that kept his fleet operational. Supply ships, fuel depots, communication relays, medical transports. They were making his fleet bleed slowly. Sir, another distress call. His communication officer reported. The garrison at Outpost 77. They report human infiltrators in their base. Send reinforcements immediately, the Admiral ordered. Sir, we sent reinforcements 4 hours ago. They never arrived. The Admiral felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Fear. At Outpost 77, Commander Threk of the Jekrel Imperial Guard was experiencing his own nightmare. His garrison of 3,000 soldiers held a captured human mining station. It should have been secure. They had checked every corridor, every room, every ventilation shaft, but somehow the humans had gotten inside. It started small. Food supplies found contaminated, water recyclers mysteriously failing. Then soldiers started disappearing, one at a time. They would go on patrol and never return. Search parties would find no bodies, no signs of struggle, just empty corridors and a growing sense of dread. Then the voices started, whispers through the communication system. Sometimes in the Jekrel language, sometimes in human languages that the translator barely caught. You're already dead. You just don't know it yet. Over and over, at random intervals, disrupting sleep and sanity. Commander Threk ordered his troops to remove their communication devices. The whispers continued through the station speakers. He ordered the speakers disabled. The whispers seemed to come from the walls themselves. On the 4th day, the life support system began to fail. Not all at once, just gradually. Temperature dropping, air circulation slowing. His engineers couldn't find the problem. Every time they fixed one issue, another appeared. By the 7th day, half his garrison was suffering from exhaustion and paranoia. They were shooting at shadows, fighting among themselves. 3 soldiers had taken their own lives. Commander Threk sent a desperate message to the Admiral. We control the station, but we're dying anyway. The humans are here, but we can't find them. It's like fighting ghosts. The message never reached the Admiral. The humans had intercepted it. They broadcast it across Jekrel military frequencies. Every garrison in the Outer Rim heard Commander Threk's desperate voice. They heard his fear. That was the point. Back in human space, General Morrison watched the reports with grim satisfaction. The psychological campaign is working. Their forces are demoralized. They're seeing human infiltrators everywhere, even where there aren't any. How many actual infiltration teams do we have in their territory? Sarah Chen asked. 6, Morrison replied. 6 small teams causing chaos across 12 occupied installations. But they think we have hundreds. Fear does that. It multiplies in the dark. Sarah looked at the tactical display. Red markers showed Jekrel positions. Blue markers showed human fleet movements. The 2 forces hadn't even fully engaged yet. But the Jekrel were already suffering heavy casualties. What about the Berserker-class ships? She asked. Morrison's expression hardened. They launch tomorrow. That's when this war gets really ugly. The Berserker-class assault ships were something humanity had hoped never to build. They weren't designed for exploration or defense. They had one purpose: maximum enemy casualties in minimum time. No crew quarters for long missions. No diplomatic facilities. No science labs. Just weapons, armor, engines, and crew stations for soldiers who knew they probably wouldn't come home. 20 Berserker ships launched from Earth's orbital shipyards. They headed straight for the Jekrel Third Fleet. Admiral Zashthak's sensors detected them when they were still 2 days away. 20 ships approaching his fleet of over 100 vessels. He almost felt insulted. What could 20 ships do against his entire fleet? He was about to find out. The human ships didn't slow down as they approached. They didn't attempt to communicate. They didn't maneuver for tactical advantage. They simply accelerated to maximum speed and crashed straight into the Jekrel formation. But they weren't ramming ships. They were deploying weapons humanity had kept locked away for 2 centuries. Weapons designed not to destroy ships cleanly, but to make sure everyone aboard died slowly. Bioweapons that got through air filtration, radiation bombs that cooked crews inside their own armor, nanite swarms that disassembled ships at the molecular level, and conventional weapons fired so rapidly that point defense systems couldn't keep up. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, Admiral Zashthak had lost 37 ships. The humans had lost all 20 Berserker vessels. But the casualty ratio was horrifying. 37 Jekrel ships meant nearly 40,000 dead. 20 human ships meant 2,000 dead, and the humans just kept coming. More Berserker ships were already being built. More stealth vessels were infiltrating Jekrel space. More psychological warfare broadcasts were being sent. The Luminari Collective contacted Earth directly, bypassing the Galactic Council. Their representative, the same crystal being who had dismissed Sarah's warnings, appeared on the communication screen. "We wish to understand," she said, her voice lacking its previous condescension. "We have studied your transmitted histories. We see what you were, but why? Why do you fight this way? Other species have wars, but not like this. Never like this." Sarah looked at the Luminari representative. "Because for 10,000 years the greatest threat to humanity was other humans. We didn't fight over territory or resources. We fought over ideas, over beliefs, over pride. And we learned that if you're going to fight, you fight to win completely. You fight to make sure your enemy can never threaten you again." "This is barbaric," the Luminari said. "Yes," Sarah agreed. "It is. That's why we stopped. We looked at what we were doing to ourselves and we chose to be better. We built a peaceful civilization. We explored the stars with wonder instead of weapons. For 200 years we were the species we wanted to be. Then why return to this?" Sarah's expression hardened. "Because the Jekrel didn't give us a choice. They killed our people. They laughed at our warnings. They thought peace meant weakness. They needed to learn that we chose peace from a position of strength, not helplessness." The Luminari was silent for a long moment. "The Galactic Council is afraid. We've been watching the war. We've seen what your species is doing. Some council members believe we should intervene. Others believe we should simply let the Jekrel fall and take it as a lesson." "Tell the council this," Sarah said. "Humanity has no quarrel with anyone but the Jekrel Imperium. We will not stop until they surrender unconditionally, but we will not expand this war unless forced to. The choice is theirs." After the Luminari disconnected, General Morrison spoke quietly. "Do you think they'll intervene?" Sarah shook her head. "No, they're too afraid. They've read our history. They know that if they attack us now, we'll treat them the same way we're treating the Jekrel. They're finally starting to understand what we tried to tell them, which is that the most dangerous predator is the one that learned to act like prey." The Jekrel home system of Jas had never been attacked in 40,000 years of recorded history. It was protected by 12 orbital defense platforms, each one powerful enough to destroy a fleet. Countless automated defense satellites formed a sphere of protection around the planet. The Imperium considered it impregnable. Human ships appeared at the edge of the system 3 months into the war. Admiral Zusthak, now defending his own homeworld, watched the human fleet approach. He had reinforcements from across the Imperium. Over 300 warships. This would be where humanity's attack finally broke. This would be where they learned they couldn't win. But the humans didn't attack the defense platforms. They didn't engage the Jekrel fleet. Instead, they launched thousands of small objects into the system. Objects moving at incredible speeds. "What are those?" his tactical officer asked. The answer came when the first one struck a defense platform. The impact released energy equivalent to a small star going supernova. The platform simply ceased to exist. Then another impact, and another. The humans were throwing asteroids at near light speed. Simple kinetic weapons, but moving so fast that nothing could stop them. Within an hour, all 12 defense platforms were destroyed. The satellite network was shattered, and the human fleet hadn't fired a single energy weapon. The Jekrel fleet tried to engage. The humans fell back, leading them away from the planet. Then more human ships appeared from different vectors. The Jekrel were surrounded. It was a trap. The battle lasted 3 days. When it ended, Admiral Zusthak had lost over 200 ships. His fleet was broken. The humans now controlled the space around Jas, but they didn't invade. They didn't bomb the cities. They established a blockade and sent a message directly to the Imperium's ruling council. Surrender unconditionally, or your children will learn fear as their first language. On Jas, panic spread through the population. For the first time in their long history, the Jekrel faced a threat they couldn't defeat. The humans had penetrated all the way to their homeworld in just 3 months. The Imperium's supreme commander tried to negotiate. He contacted the human fleet and offered terms: limited surrender, reparations, promises of peace. The human response was simple: unconditional surrender or continued war. You have 72 hours to decide. Back on Earth, Sarah Chen had been promoted to Minister of War, a title that hadn't existed for 200 years. She hated it, but someone had to manage what humanity had become again. A Jakrell officer had been captured during a battle 2 weeks ago. Sarah went to speak with him. His name was Officer Dizrak, and he had been part of the original attack on the human colonies. Why? He asked when Sarah entered the detention cell. His translator made his voice sound tired, defeated. Why do you fight like this? We've fought other species. We've had wars, but not like this. Never like this. Sarah sat across from him, because we learned how during 10,000 years of fighting ourselves. Every strategy we're using against you, we used against each other first. We perfected the art of war because we had no choice. It was evolve or go extinct, but you stopped. You had peace for 2 centuries. We chose peace, Sarah corrected. That's not the same as being incapable of war. It means we know exactly what war is. We know the cost. We know the horror. And that's why we tried so hard to avoid this. Dizrak looked at her with his yellow eyes. I was there. At the first colony. I thought it would be easy. Your people had no soldiers, no weapons. But they fought anyway. They used mining equipment. They set traps. They made us pay for every meter. And when we finally won, I found a message one of them had written on a wall. It said, "Make them remember us." What did that mean? It meant that even if they died, they wanted you to know you had been in a fight. They wanted you to remember that humans don't surrender easily. It was a warning you didn't listen to. We didn't know, Dizrak said quietly. We thought you were like the other council species, civilized, evolved past violence. We're not evolved past violence. We're just very, very good at controlling it. But you pushed us. You killed our people. You laughed at our warnings. So we showed you what we were trying to protect you from. Protect us? You're destroying us, Sarah nodded. Yes, because the only way to make sure you never attack humanity again is to make you understand that we're not prey. We're predators pretending to be civilized. And once you force us to stop pretending, we're very good at what we do. Dizrak was silent for a long moment. The Imperium will surrender. The Council is meeting now. They have no choice. But I need to know something. Why didn't you use your worst weapons? We've studied your history. We know you have things that could destroy entire planets. Biological weapons that could kill every Jakrell. Why didn't you use them? Sarah looked at him. Because we're trying to remember how to be the species we want to be. We're trying to hold on to our humanity even while doing inhuman things. We needed you to understand that we're dangerous, but we also needed to prove to ourselves that we haven't completely lost who we are. That makes no sense. Probably not to you, but it makes sense to us. We're fighting a war on 2 fronts, one against you and one against ourselves. The real battle is staying human while doing terrible things. The Jakrell Imperium surrendered 6 hours later. Unconditional surrender. Their military would be dismantled. Their government would be reformed under human supervision. War reparations would be paid. And most importantly, the Imperium would never threaten humanity again. The Galactic Council held an emergency session. 4 other member species immediately sent formal messages to Earth. Apologies for not supporting humanity earlier, promises of friendship, trade agreements, non-aggression pacts. The luminary representative addressed the Council. I have completed my analysis of human history and their recent war. My findings are disturbing. The humans didn't just defeat the Jakrell. They did it while holding back. The weapons they used are not their most dangerous. The strategies they employed are not their most devastating. They won this war at perhaps 30% of their actual capability. The council chamber was silent. Furthermore, the luminary continued, I have identified over 15,000 documented wars in human history. They have been fighting continuously for their entire existence. They have developed entire philosophies around conflict. They have turned warfare into an art form. And then 200 years ago, they simply stopped. They chose peace not because they couldn't fight, but because they understood the cost better than any species alive. What does this mean for the Council? Someone asked. It means we made a terrible mistake. We assumed that because humanity chose peace, they were weak. We were wrong. They chose peace because they're strong enough to control themselves. And when we forced them to abandon that choice, we created something terrifying, a species that knows exactly how to destroy an enemy, and has the will to do it. The Council voted to offer humanity a permanent seat, with full voting rights, and veto power. The vote was unanimous. Sarah Chen received the news while standing on an observation deck looking at Earth below. General Morrison joined her. "We won," he said, "did we?" Sarah asked. "We proved we could fight. We proved we're dangerous. But we also proved we're exactly what we tried not to be. We're the monsters from our own history. We did what we had to do, I know. But I can't help thinking about those miners on the colonies. They fought with mining lasers and hope. They died to prove a point. And now the galaxy is afraid of us. Is that really winning?" Morrison didn't answer, because they both knew the truth. Humanity had won the war, but lost something of itself in the process. The real question was whether they could find it again. On Joss, the Jekrel watched human ships patrol their skies. Children asked their parents why the star demons were there. The parents had no good answers. The galaxy had learned a lesson. Humanity's last warning had been ignored, and the price was paid in blood and fear. Never again would the Council species look at humans and see weakness. They would see something else. They would see a species that chose peace and the nightmare that happened when that choice was taken away. The war ended after 6 months. 6 months that changed the galaxy forever. The Treaty of Geneva was signed on Earth in the same building where humanity had chosen peace 200 years earlier. Representatives from the Galactic Council watched as the Jekrel Imperium formally surrendered. Admiral Zustak, stripped of his rank and facing trial, signed the documents with shaking hands. Sarah Chen, still serving as Minister of War though she wanted desperately to quit, read the terms aloud. The Jekrel military would be reduced to a small defense force. Human observers would monitor their government. War reparations would be paid over the next 50 years. And most significantly, the Imperium would share their technology and resources with humanity as part of the rebuilding process. But the real change wasn't written in the treaty. It was written in the eyes of every alien representative present. Fear, respect, and something that might have been shame. After the signing, the Galactic Council held a special session. They offered humanity a permanent seat with full voting rights. Sarah almost laughed at the irony. 3 years ago, they wouldn't even grant humanity basic mining rights. Now they were offering power. "We accept," Sarah said simply, "on one condition. The Council establishes strict rules of engagement for all member species. No more attacks on colonies. No more taking territory by force. Disputes will be resolved through diplomacy first, always. And if diplomacy fails," a council member asked carefully. Sarah's expression was cold. "Then humanity will be watching. And will remember what happened to the Jekrel." The measure passed unanimously. 3 months after the war ended, Sarah stood at a memorial on Earth. A massive structure of black stone rising from the ground like a spike piercing the sky. On it were carved 300,000 names. Every human who had died in the war. Miners, soldiers, civilians, crew members. All remembered. At the base of the memorial, words were carved in every human language. They forced us to remember what we were. General Morrison joined her. He looked older now, tired. The war had aged everyone who fought it. "The decommissioning starts next week," he said. "We're dismantling the Berserker fleet, converting the warships back to civilian use. The draft is ending. Within a year, Earth's military will be back to pre-war levels." "Good," Sarah said. "We need to remember how to be peaceful again, will we? Can we?" Sarah looked at the names on the memorial. "We have to. That's the whole point. We proved we can fight. Now we have to prove we can stop." Across the galaxy, humanity's victory was being studied. The Luminary had established a new field of academic study, human conflict analysis. Every military academy of every council species now required courses on human warfare tactics. Not to copy them, but to understand them. To never make the same mistake the Jekrel made. A Luminary professor taught her students about the war. She showed them footage of the battles, the stealth attacks, the psychological warfare, the kinetic bombardments. Her students watched in horrified fascination. "Why are we studying this?" one young student asked. "The humans won. The war is over." "We study it," the professor explained, "because we need to understand what we're dealing with. The humans are members of the Galactic Council now. They're our partners. But we must never forget what they're capable of. But they chose peace again. They're dismantling their war machine." "Yes," the professor agreed. "And that is the most important lesson of all. The humans are not violent by nature. They're violent by choice, and they can choose to stop. Most species in the galaxy evolved past their violent phases naturally. It took thousands of years, but the humans forced themselves to evolve. They looked at what they were doing and said no more. That takes a kind of strength we don't fully understand. Are they stronger than us? The professor thought carefully before answering. Technologically? No. The council species have more advanced technology in many areas. Culturally? That's harder to measure. But psychologically? Yes. The humans are stronger than us in ways that matter. They know what they're capable of. They've seen the depths of their own darkness, and they choose to be better anyway. That's not weakness. That's the most powerful kind of strength there is. On Jas, the Jekrel were learning to live under human supervision. It was humiliating at first. The proud Imperium, reduced to following rules set by a species they had dismissed as children. But as time passed, something unexpected happened. Young Jekrel began studying human culture. They learned about the Century of Fire, when humans nearly destroyed themselves. They learned how humanity had rebuilt from the ashes, choosing cooperation over competition. Some Jekrel began to wonder if the Imperium could do the same. Admiral Zishthak, awaiting trial in a human detention facility, received a visitor. Saracen came to speak with him one final time. "Why did you come?" he asked. "Because I want to understand. Why did you attack us? You could have negotiated. You could have shared the Outer Rim. Why choose war?" The former admiral looked at his clawed hands. "Because we always had. For 40,000 years, when the Imperium wanted something, we took it. No one stopped us. We forgot that there could be consequences. So you just assumed we would surrender. Yes, you had been peaceful for so long. We thought it was all you knew." He looked at her. "I read your history after the first attacks. All of it. I stayed up for days reading about your wars, and I realized something terrible. We didn't attack humans. We attacked the idea of humans, the peaceful, civilized version you showed us. We never saw the truth underneath, which is that you're only peaceful because you choose to be. And when that choice is taken away, you become something we can't fight. You become what you were, and what you were is terrifying." Sarah nodded slowly. "That's the burden we carry. We know what we are. We know what we can do. Every day we choose not to. That's what the council species don't understand. They think their peace is natural. Ours is deliberate. It's work. Will humanity stay peaceful?" Zithak asked. "I don't know," Sarah admitted. "I hope so. But now the galaxy knows the truth about us. We're not the friendly explorers they wanted us to be. We're survivors, fighters, killers when we need to be. Maybe that knowledge will keep the peace. Maybe it will cause more problems. Time will tell." 6 months after the war ended, Saracen finally resigned as Minister of War. The title was abolished immediately after. Earth's civilian government resumed full control. The emergency powers granted during the war were revoked. Sarah took a position as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council. It seemed fitting. She had warned them before the war. Now she would work to make sure nothing like it happened again. On her first day at the council headquarters, she passed the chamber where it had all started. The place where she had stood and warned them. The place where they had laughed. No one was laughing now. A new human colony ship launched from Earth. Sarah watched it on the news. The ship was named the HSS Last Warning. The name was deliberate. A reminder to everyone, human and alien alike, of what had happened and why. A reporter asked Sarah about the name during an interview. "Some aliens are saying it's threatening. That humanity is being provocative." Sarah smiled, but it was a sad smile. "It's not a threat. It's a promise. We're promising ourselves that we'll remember this war. We'll remember what we became. And we'll remember why we fought so hard to be something better." The last warning wasn't for the council. It was for us. In a classroom on a distant world, a young alien student raised her hand during history class. "Teacher, I don't understand. The humans won the war. Why did they stop? Why didn't they conquer more territory? Why didn't they make themselves rulers of the galaxy?" The teacher, an old luminary who remembered the war firsthand, considered the question. Because that would prove they're what everyone feared. Conquerors, tyrants. Instead, they proved something more important. They proved they're what they claimed to be all along. A peaceful species that will defend itself when necessary, but doesn't seek to dominate others. So they're not dangerous anymore? Oh no, the teacher corrected quickly. They're still dangerous. Perhaps more dangerous than before because now everyone knows it. But they're dangerous the way a sleeping predator is dangerous. Don't wake it, don't threaten it, and it will leave you alone. That's the lesson of the war. The humans gave us a choice, peace or nightmares. The galaxy chose peace. Sarah Chen retired to a quiet house on Earth's coast 5 years after the war. She spent her days writing a memoir about the conflict, about the choices humanity made and the prices they paid. She wanted future generations to understand. On the last page of her book, she wrote, "We are not heroes. We are not villains. We are humans. We're capable of great love and terrible violence. We can build wonders and create nightmares. The choice of which one we become is ours to make every single day." The war taught us that peace isn't the absence of the capacity for violence. Peace is the choice to not use that capacity, and that choice, made every day by every person, is what makes us human. That is our warning to the galaxy and ourselves. We know what we are. We know what we can do, and we choose to be better. That choice is our greatest strength and our heaviest burden. May we never forget either. The galaxy heard the warning, and they remembered the end.